Hello everyone, this is Anastasia Stoyanova. Welcome back to our series dedicated to the CELPIP exam, and in today's lesson we are going to practice together and we are going to write task 1 for our CELPIP exam. But first things first, I'd like to talk about this whole idea of writing and what it means to perform the first task of writing on your CELPIP exam. As you could see here, that only about a third of candidates reach CLB 9, because a lot of students, they aim for CLB 9, but please remember that it's a very advanced level. So it's achievable, it's doable, and we are going to take a look how it's going to be possible to do that. But I'd like to point out that 7.9 is a very good score. 7 is already upper intermediate, so that's a great score. In today's lesson, we'll cover task format, how it's scored, the structure of your email, how to write an email, types of emails, and the tone. So the task format, it never changes. It always stays the same. Let me show you here. We have a context on the left. It's always like that. This is the screenshot taken from the official website, celpip.com, celpip.ca. So you gotta read very carefully what the context is, who you are writing to, and then on the right-hand side here, you have the bullet points which you have to address. And please remember from the very get-go, from the very start, one bullet point, one paragraph, okay? And it always like that. You have 27 minutes for the whole task. So please aim for 3 to 4 minutes to plan what you're gonna write. You could even write your plan here. Remember that the only thing matters is what you submit at the very end. So you could type the plan here, just the key ideas, key phrases, and then you will erase it once you're done with your writing. So planning 3 to 4 minutes, then writing about 20 minutes, okay, and checking also 2 to 3 minutes. So this is important to also allocate your time to check your work at the very end, just to avoid, typos and all those things. The ideal length is 150 to 200 words. So we are aiming in between. So if you have like 155, great. So just aim no less, no more, okay? So no fewer words than 150, that's for sure. It means that you have not covered everything, you have not developed your ideas. So just aim somewhere in between these numbers, all right? And you always get 3 and sometimes 4 bullet points. So every point in the prompt matters. If you miss one point and if you do not develop the ideas, your score is going to get dropped by a full CLB level. So that's something to be aware of. There are 6 types of emails. However, I want to say that there are some other types. So, but most commonly we have complaint. So you're complaining to somebody about something, you're requesting some information, or you're requesting some clarification about something. You're inviting somebody also. You're apologizing to a colleague, to a friend, so it can be formal or informal. You're recommending something, okay? And again, very similar to requesting, but slightly more formal. It's an inquiry, so you want to get some information or you want to ask like a follow-up question regarding something. And there are some other types, but basically, they are very, very similar to the ones you see on the screen, so just some variations that may happen. So the 4 criteria that we have, this is how you are going to be assessed, and we will take a look at the CLB levels as well. But just right now, briefly, we have content and coherence. So how well you developed your topic. Did you stay on the topic? Did you write exactly what you had to write about, nothing extra? Logical flow, so all of those transitions, like firstly, secondly, or in conclusion, things like that, or something else. We'll take a look at it together today. I'll show you. and just enough detail for every point, for every bullet point according to the task. Next is vocabulary. So your words, there are, of course, common vocabulary. Yes, there is common vocabulary in the English language. However, there should be context-specific words. So let's say if you're writing about the context of choosing a pharmacy or a family doctor, you're going to be able to use more specific topic vocabulary. The words like walk-in clinic, for example, right? So that's precise words and also variety depending on the topic and the fitting tone. So if you're writing to a manager, so it has to be more formal, right? You cannot just write, hey, what's up, and so on. So that's obvious, but sometimes people forget and then they write something like hello, which is already a mistake, right? It cannot be like that if you're writing to someone who is who you have a formal relationship with, yeah, so like a manager. But we'll take a look at the specific examples. I think it will be easier. There are two more. Readability. How easy is it to read your writing? So sentence structures. Your sentence structure has to vary. What it means is that you cannot just write in simple sentences, yeah, like I don't know, I like cats. Yeah, it's a simple sentence. You cannot write every sentence like that. It doesn't mean that you cannot use simple sentences whatsoever, but you gotta use the connectors like and, but, so, because, also some subordinate relations between the parts of the sentence, like if, unless, those things. So we'll also take a look at that. And you gotta have paragraphs, so when the examiner opens your work and he or she starts reading, so when they read, they gotta see each bullet point separately, and ideally you gotta make one spacing between paragraphs just to separate it visually. And punctuation. Remember to review punctuation. And on our website, englishstoyanova.ca, I'll show you today, there are very useful courses and examples and templates that you could use, and you can learn more about these things like sentence structures, paragraphs, punctuation. Task fulfillment. So how well you did what you had to do. Remember, you developed the topic, yeah, here. It's very kind of close. Everything is interrelated, right? Like if you have not covered all the points, you lose marks for task fulfillment, but also for content. So it's all interrelated. You have right format, so you have introduction, yeah, you have signing off at the very end, you have greeting or salutation, that's what's called, and the tone is right. So this is just a brief review of the criteria, and we'll take a look at the criteria in detail also. Now I want to talk about email structure. So first of all, you always have to have salutation, meaning say hello, but in a certain way, depending on the situation. For example, if it's more formal, you will say, dear, this is just to memorize, dear, and then Mr. Smith, yeah? Sometimes they give you last names or in the names, but sometimes if you don't know, you just write, dear sir or madam. It's a standard form, dear sir or madam, comma. If it's informal or kind of semi-formal, semi-informal, let's say you're writing to your friend, so hi Alex, that would do. But in most cases, you need dear Mr. or dear Ms. and then last name and then comma. And then the next thing you want to open up, I'm writing to do what? I'm writing to complain. I'm writing to inquire more information regarding something. I'm writing to invite you to certain event. So your purpose, just in one phrase, has to be there. In that way, the examiner understands that you understand what you're doing. And then we have body, so one paragraph per bullet point that we have in the prompt, in the task. And then closing and signing off. So remember, the way we start, we greet somebody, and then call to action and signing off are very important. They are part of the structure, so to speak. What is call to action? Let's say sometimes it's obvious. They ask you to, I don't know, if you're complaining, of course you want some kind of resolution. You want them to solve your problem, maybe provide a refund. or something like that. So that would be call to action. You're going to politely ask for that, and I'll show you the example. And then this is important for everything, even for if you're writing, let's say, an invitation and you're inviting, you want to make sure your purpose and your call to action are connected, right? If you're inviting, so you gotta say something like, please reply to my invitation to let me know if you are going to be able to come. It's like RSVP, right? So this is your call to action, and it depends on your purpose. And the way you sign off, it can be sincerely, comma, and then first name, last name. By the way, you could use your real name, you could use a fake name, you could just write John Doe. As long as it's there, the examiner understands that you understand what you're doing. The most common one in Canada is best regards, and then comma, and then first name, last name. If it's informal, you could even write take care, comma, and then just first name, and that would suffice. So that would be enough. The thing about tone, and you might think now this is easy, but sometimes we tend to just fall into this rabbit hole, start writing more informally and then use very formal vocabulary, or vice versa, right? We start very formally and then we start using very informal vocabulary. So make sure that it's consistent throughout your work. So for example, here, formal tone, we have Dear Ms. Chen, comma. Just remember, punctuation is also important. I'm writing to report an issue with the office heating. So that's your purpose, okay? And then here, friendly tone. So for example, you're replying to an invitation. Hi, Jamie, comma, I'd love for you to join our family dinner. Or in this case, you are inviting. Yeah, this is the example of invitation, but maybe you're replying to an invitation. And this would be another type of email, which is, like I said, very close to the concept of inviting somebody or responding to an invitation. So make sure you practice and train for those types of emails. And in this case, you see, I want to point out, when you write friendly, in a friendly way, you're allowed to use I'd instead of I would love to do something. But when you're writing formally, you are not allowed, so meaning you would lose points if you, let's say you wrote I'm writing. That would be considered like a style mistake, a tone mistake. So make sure you are consistent, and if it's a formal tone, you should not use contractions. So only full forms should be used. Just please remember that sometimes, but it's not often, okay? It could be semi-formal tone, like a neighbor, colleague. In this case, you are not going to be punished if you use contractions. But keep in mind just to separate in your mind, and be consistent, okay? Because it depends how close you are with your neighbor, how close you are with your colleague. But I would say, I would stick personally, if I'm writing to a neighbor, I would stick to slightly more formal style. The same goes with a colleague. Just be careful, but we'll take a look at the examples. So more examples and more templates that are ready for you to be memorized you could find on our website, englishstoyanova.ca. Some of them are for free, some of them are available through the subscription. We'll take a look at it together in a short bit, okay? So example of a formal email. As we said, the purpose, I'm writing to do what? To complain, I'm writing to maybe respond to your invitation. So just memorize, this is your beginning. And then some other useful phrases that could be reused. So you could use them over and over again, like in different tasks. Like I would appreciate it if you did something for me, yeah? It's very cool because in that way you show the examiner that you know conditional sentences, that you know the polite use of conditional sentences. Could you please let me know? It's a very good way, indirect question. Thank you for your understanding, and then you develop your idea, yes? So give more context. Do not make it too generic. So we always want to include more details and want to develop your ideas. I look forward to your reply. Please accept my apologies if it's you're apologizing sincerely, comma, or best regards, comma, and then first name, last name. This is what we already established. We talked about it. If it's a friendly email, you could just say, I just wanted to say, I just wanted to write about something. It would be great if you could. Still, it's not too formal to say like that. It's just a polite way to say. And you know that in Canada, we are polite. We are always polite, no matter what, like friends, neighbors, colleagues. Let me know what you think. Thanks so much for your invitation. Can't wait to hear from you. So notice here you have a contraction. You even skip the subject. Yeah, I can't wait. But if I were you, I would still include the subject just to be on the safe side with the examiner checking everything. And then things like take care or sorry about the mix-up instead of saying sorry, I apologize for making this mistake, blah, blah, blah. That would sound a bit more formal. This one sounds informal and great if it's a friendly email. All right, so just be careful with the tone. I want to point it out that it sets the ceiling on your score, okay? So before the examiner reaches your content, they look at your tone from the very first line that you're writing, they will see. So, but what can we do in this case? We got to decide who you're writing to, and that's your answer. And then you got to actually write something. So just ask yourself, am I writing to a colleague? Am I writing to a friend? And then think about the content and write the key words and phrases. Now we are going to move to practice and a real task. So please go to our platform, englishstoyanova.ca/app/. I'll put the link into the description of this video, so the active link will be there as well. But it's kind of easy. You could just type it up and practice with me. The way I'm going to structure this, so I'll show you the task. I'll show you how it works. This is the way it's going to be in a real exam, and I have prepared the answer. Okay, just to save time, not to type it up and everything. Otherwise, this lesson would take over an hour. Long, and we don't want that. We want a short, good, nice lesson. Here we go. This is the way our platform looks like. You have probably watched the previous videos regarding listening, reading. If you have not, so please go check my channel and do that. Very useful stuff with all the strategies there. So today we'll focus on writing an email, and we'll do if I'm not mistaken, test 21, just as an example for you guys. So you see this right here, and it says time 27 minutes, just like on a real exam. We have one question. By the way, overall, on the CELPIP writing section, we have 2 tasks. So in the next video, I'll talk about the second task, which is the survey, the opinion survey. So let's take a look. So here, I have already practiced, so I want to click write again, and the timer starts, you see? And here on the left-hand side, just like on a real exam, you see the context, the task, and then you start typing. And then it tells you how many words you typed. It also checks for your spelling. So let's say if I mistyped something, just like on a real exam, let's say I mistyped the word idea. It corrects me, like it just highlights, okay? It doesn't correct me automatically because on a real exam, it does not correct you. It only highlights. So the same thing we implemented here. So, but see if I typed it right, it doesn't highlight. So this is very helpful, and you type like that, and then AI checks in accordance with the criteria and the score, and I'll show you a little bit of level descriptors as well. It's all available on the official website, all the level descriptors, so CELPIP is not something super secret, so we have everything. It's just your job to study and to get ready. Okay, let's take a look at the context. So you see time is ticking, right? We have appreciation for housing, sponsors, support. And the context. You recently participated in a local newcomers welcome dinner organized by a community sponsor group in your city. The event helped you connect with other newcomers and learn about local resources. you'd like to write an email to the coordinator to express how meaningful the experience was for you. So first thing in your head, when you already read this, you start planning, who am I writing to? You got to ask yourself, okay, coordinator. It's not your friend, okay? So we're going to write formally. The context will be formal. The tone will be formal. And here we have the name. Write an email to Evelyn Bouchard, the coordinator of the Newcomers Welcome Dinner. The same range of words. It's always the same for this task. And we have 3 bullet points, just like on a real exam, absolutely the same, like 3, sometimes 4, but very rarely. So first point, express how the welcome dinner made you feel as a newcomer. So you got to use some vocabulary of feelings and explain why. But remember, before doing that, you got to also write your purpose. I'm writing to do what? To express what? To use also the vocabulary of feelings and emotions. The second part, describe a specific part of the event that was especially memorable for you. Maybe it was a workshop, so you gotta be more specific. You cannot be too general. Suggest an idea for making future events more beneficial for newcomers. Okay, so you see here we have already some submissions, some attempts. You can do as many attempts as you want. It will register the date, the time, your level based on the descriptors, and I'll show you. So I have prepared for you guys one of the responses. So here is just a Google document that I prepared, and we'll use it just in order to save time. But of course, when you practice on your own on the platform, please make sure you type it out. You do not use AI. You check yourself, okay? Practice, and then we'll give you the feedback based on the criteria, and AI will correct your vocab, grammar, punctuation, everything in accordance with the standards. So, but here I prepared this model and a model sample, which falls into this category 9 to 12. I would say 10 ideally, because we don't want to exaggerate vocabulary too much. So we're aiming for 9, 10. I'm sure most of you do. So in this case, let's analyze a little bit, and then I will put it into AI and we'll get the feedback. So you see, first thing, as we said, we have dear and then very polite. Since it's Evelyn, it's a woman, so I'm writing, instead of Mr., I'm writing Ms. I don't know if she's married or not. It's impolite to write Mrs. We don't know, so most commonly, more polite version, if you don't know this information about the woman, if she's married or not. So we are just putting Ms., full stop, and then last name, and then comma. Remember this formatting, this is important. And then I have paragraph, and you see that in between paragraphs I have this spacing, so that's very important. That's the first thing that the examiner looks at, just the formatting, and then also the sign off, best regards, and then just name. You could write fake name. I could have written my name, Anastasia Stoyanova. You could write John Doe. Doesn't matter. Just stick to one thing. So first, I'm writing purpose. What am I doing according to the task on the platform here? I am writing to do what? Express how meaningful the experience was for you. Okay? In this case, I'm writing to express my sincere gratitude for the newcomers welcome dinner you organized last week. And then I'm going to explain why. I'm going to give the details. So I'm giving more context. As someone who arrived in Canada only a few months ago, I had been struggling with a sense of isolation. Very good vocabulary here. Yes, I'm explaining it. Why was it meaningful? Remember, I'm doing my job. I'm responding to this. How meaningful the experience was for you. And I'm explaining why. So I'd been struggling with the sense of isolation that often accompanies such a significant life transition. Surely, notice the vocabulary here accompanies life transition, and also the words like significant instead of important or necessary. Yes, so significant is a better word, is higher level word. Notice the use of grammar. I had been struggling. Notice the use of sentence structure that we talked about today. We talked about the variety of sentence structure. So I am using here as someone. Yeah, I'm giving the context a little bit, and then past perfect continuous, which is also great for the level. your event reminding me that I was not navigating this journey alone. This is a nice intro, and this is my purpose. And then about a little bit about my feelings here. Okay, I wrote that I'd been struggling with a sense of isolation, because remember, our task is to write about feelings and how it made you feel. So I was not alone. This is how it made me feel. And then I'm writing about the moment, yes, the important part of the event that was memorable. Of course, I cannot just say the important part of the event that was memorable. I gotta paraphrase if I'm aiming for a higher score. In this case, I'm gonna write one moment that stood out for me. It's the same idea. I'm just playing around with the words. I'm saying that stood out for me instead of saying memorable, instead of using the same word. Was the resource fair held after dinner, where, I'm explaining, volunteers patiently walked attendees through settlement services, which is useful for a newcomer when you come to Canada. What kind of settlement services? Yeah, like language programs, employment support. So I'm giving at least 2-3 ideas are perfect. Enumerating using the correct punctuation here. I put comma and then the last element of my enumeration. Having that information presented in such an accessible, welcoming environment made a considerable difference. It's a very good phrase to memorize, I would say, and you could reuse it to any context. Made a considerable difference. And then I'm explaining, as it can otherwise be overwhelming to locate these resources independently. Remember, my job is to use some vocabulary of feelings, emotions, and explain my reasoning. I always gotta explain why, right? Why was it useful? Remember, one more point, we gotta suggest an idea for future events. How can we help other newcomers? What else can be done? What else can we implement to make our event better? In this case, I'm opening up with a very polite way, very Canadian style here. If I may offer, you might have heard, I don't know, Mark Carney say something like, if I may ask, right? When he addresses other politicians, for example. So it's a very polite, nice way to start your idea. If I may offer a suggestion for future events, I think, and then incorporating a mentorship component would be tremendously valuable. Also memorize this nice collocation here. So mentorship would be our idea, and then we got to develop the idea. Always make sure you do that. So don't just give your idea. Say why or how it can be done. In this case, pairing newcomers with established community members who have already navigated the settlement process would allow for more personalized guidance and foster longer lasting connections. Beyond a single evening. So basically I'm explaining, yeah? I could even write here a bit more and say, for example, we could stay in touch and I could follow up with this mentor later. Yeah, something like that. And then the final part, thank you once again for your thoughtful efforts. It's what we call politeness. It's just like concluding, I hope to see this program continue and grow, and then your sign off, okay? So once again, call to action here, not much, because basically I would say we got to thank you, right? Remember, call to action depends on your task. In this case, we are just expressing how meaningful experience was for us. So in this case, not much to do, right? We just got to thank you, express the gratitude, you see, how it made you feel. So not much. We just want them to consider our feedback. If you want, you can even more explicitly add, thank you, please consider my feedback. In this case, I'm writing, I hope to see this program continue and grow. So we could have included that just to make it clearer, but that's fine. This is the way I'm going to copy and paste it into the platform right now, just to show you how it works, to show you how it gives the feedback. And surely you have more time. This is just, I'm saving for time for us. Make sure during your exam you put these nice paragraph separators, just for the examiner to see that you're separating your ideas, just like that. And that's very useful Here we go. Much better, you know? The same way you should do on your exam. And you see this, the number of words. And if I misspelled something, it will highlight. Like in this case, it does not recognize the last name, which is fine because last names are not like super common, yeah, unless you type something very common like Thompson or whatever. So now I'm submitting my answer and it's reading your response. Notice the nice feature of our platform is that you got exam tips. So while you're waiting, you're welcome to read the exam tips here. For example, splitting the time, yeah, or avoiding repeating the same word. And for that, you need to make sure you allocate 2 or 3 minutes to check. Here we go. And the AI feedback was very fast. So, level 10, great. That's exactly what I was aiming for, actually, as I've told you before. And then each criteria is explained. You see what this means? If I just navigate like that, and this is my score, and it's very very personalized, exactly what you used here. It explains summary, your strength, corrected version, okay, and vocabulary highlights in this case. So in this case, we have areas for improvement. Let's read here. For example, consider adding one specific example of how a mentorship connection might work in practice. So yeah, that's what I said. Or maybe like develop a little bit more, saying that mentor could be in touch with, I don't know, for 2 weeks after the workshop, something like that. You could strengthen the opening by briefly naming 1 or 2 specific resources you learned about at the fair. Yeah, why not? Remember that naming, like the real names, yeah? Let's say if you're complaining about the service at a restaurant, so you gotta make sure you always write the names, yeah? So don't forget. But this is just to show you to give you the idea. Of course, there's always room for improvement. Consider slightly more specific closing that references a concrete step. I've mentioned this already, yeah? So we could have added more call to action, and that's what AI does. Like it points out exactly what has to be done. Notice here we have vocabulary highlights. Yes, so something that was done well. If it's a weaker work, meaning if something was not done right, or like, score 5, yeah, it will highlight all of your mistakes. And there is the email essentials lesson that I truly love. And it's available to you, some of the parts for free, some of the parts through the subscription. And there is a template with all of the useful phrases for every writing task. So this is available for you. And the subscription is very affordable, the price of several coffees, but you benefit greatly for sure. So I highly recommend doing that, guys. Just do not cheap out on your preparation and get ready better. Here we also have the, so if you click here CELPIP, we have courses and we have templates. So we also have the course that gives you more ideas about email writing. So because now we just touched the surface, but of course there are more things to be said. I want to just show you. So for example, here, you could do more submissions. In this case, we had some other attempts as we were practicing. Notice that here, if your CLB level is below 9, it will give you like a polished version that I truly like. So it will make your version even better. So in this case, this is another example, okay? For example, here we have a correction, actually. So we were practicing, I think, with a student or with someone here. And you see that even corrects your punctuation, explains why, gives a better version. So like that, gives the words to improve. So as many times as you need. And by the way, words to improve are a great resource to use and to benefit from, to learn more like this. And there it suggests to have a course lesson, which I wrote for you guys, so that's great. The one more thing I want to do today is just to look at the level descriptors. So let's say you are, and this is, you could find it also on the official website. It's not a top secret or anything. So, for example, you're aiming for 9, and you could compare for every criterion, you can compare what you have to do, let's say if you're aiming for 7 or if you're aiming for 9. So let's say if I aim for 7, it says, okay, for your content or coherence criterion, at this level I can write short, moderately complex, factual texts, express a main idea with supporting details. Compare for CLB 9, I can write short, formal, and informal texts of some complexity. And the most important thing, not only do I express a main idea, but I also support key ideas with relevant facts, with descriptions, with details, even quotations, if needed. So there is a huge difference, actually. The same goes if we look at the vocabulary. At this level, I can use common and some context-specific words. This is for CLB 7, which is upper intermediate level. And compare it to 9, so vocabulary. At this level, I can choose words and phrases to provide accurate details, accurate descriptions, and accurate comparisons. So I should be able to compare, let's say, based on my previous experience, as we've seen today, according to the task. Let's look at readability. At this level, I can, for CLB 7, organize related ideas into paragraphs. Check, we did that. Write with adequate control of complex grammatical structures. We did that. We varied our sentences. Write with good control of simple grammar, spelling, punctuation. Compare with 9 or 10. You see, we have write with control. So don't just randomly, but control how many types you write. Compound, complex sentences. And again, on my course on the platform, we talk about that. We learn how to do that. We learn different sentence structures. And also, one more thing, write with good control of spelling and punctuation. Okay? So, very interesting. And just one more thing, task fulfillment. Let's compare 7 and 9. So present information using a tone and style that follows most common writing conventions. So this is for CLB 7, for upper intermediate level. Convey factual information about the topic. You see there is a huge difference here. It's not just tone and style, but also my intended meaning. So present information using tones, right? The correct tone and according to the writing conventions, but also convey my intended meaning. Okay, so be able to adapt your style according to the context, adapt your vocabulary, cover all the bullet points. And yeah, and here we have when. I write for familiar, clearly defined audience. And 9, I write for a defined audience, okay, formal or informal. Like for 9, you should be able to do anything with all kinds of transitions, with broad range of vocabulary. And surely I just want to point out here one more time, when it comes to different variety of sentence structures. So if you start analyzing, so for example, this one is a simple sentence. This is the last thing I want to do with you guys today, just not to make it a huge lesson, because, you know, writing is very interesting and we can go on forever. So this is a simple sentence here. Okay, this sentence we have as, so we have a phrase, makes it more complex. And also we have past perfect, continuous tense, makes it more complex. This one, simple sentence, okay? But here we have, for example, where, and it makes it more complex because we have this detail, and then we have having that information presented in this way. And then we have as, so it's like because, so it's a complex sentence, definitely. And then notice here we have if, so again, complex sentence with subordination here, which expresses politeness, so very good grammar control here. Pairing newcomers with gerund is a very good way to start a formal sentence, yeah, doing something, and then we have who, a relative clause, who have already navigated, and then would, which makes it more formal and hypothetical. A great grammar control here. So you see how you could vary your sentences. And I think for task 2, for example, if you want to compare for CLB 7, can you spot the difference here? Only simple sentences, very short. It just briefly, it's the same task, and we are writing to Ms. Bashar. And yeah, very short. For example, here we could connect. I would also like to suggest an idea. For example, yeah, connect these two ideas. Avoid saying I think and in my opinion. So just like make it more compact and connected. And we could just put comma here, comma, get rid of in my opinion, and then comma, and this would help people to build stronger connections. This vocabulary is not, it's very, remember that CLB 7 is very good level. It's already like B2 European framework or upper intermediate. But it's just like if you compare the vocabulary and the structures, definitely the first text we had more precise vocabulary, the sense of isolation, accompany, significant life transition, right? Even the opening, express my sincere gratitude. And if you compare it here, moving to a new country can be challenging. So it's just not as complex, not as precise. When you write something like that and the platform gives you the sample or the polished version, try to write down the sentences. Just write them down with your hand on piece of paper, and memorize them. The more you memorize, the more, you will be able to produce during the exam. Because I'm sure you are able to write in a more simple way, yeah, and our brain just wants to write like that because this is more familiar, this is what we know. But just to memorize in a more complex way. So some structures, some vocabulary like that. All right. And one final word, please go to the platform, and we have so many great tasks here to practice, and then do the mock exam with the timer. And I'll be making more videos regarding the second part and the speaking, and we'll take a look at the samples together, practice, have fun, and pass the exam. So thank you so much. Please go and check out our platform, and I'll see you in the next video.